Hello Internet! Gino, aka That Pinguino, here again with another deep look. This time I'm going to be taking a look at Bastion for the Xbox 360, and what I'm going to be looking at is the very last gameplay moments of Bastion. So if you don't want spoilers, this is not the place to look. So what I'm going to be looking at in particular about these scenes is a little gameplay concept that I've noticed but I didn't see had a name. So I came up with one. I call it the subversive pivot, and the main concept is kind of, if you think like narrative twists in movies or books or TV shows, stuff like that, the subversive pivot is the idea of kind of a gameplay version of that. That those gameplay systems that you build up over the course of a game can be subverted at the very end to kind of pivot emotionally and pivot onto give a little bit extra story oomph to a moment by breaking a lot of the gameplay rules you set up over the course of a game. So to set that up, here at the end of Bastion you get access to this weapon called the battering ram. It lets you basically mow down pretty much any enemy in one hit that you come across in this game. The special attack just wipes out everything on the screen. Your basic attacks will kill everything around you. You can do it like a big stomp that takes everything out. Like, all of the attacks are super duper powerful, but you still have health. Like, you can still get hurt, you still get damaged. The gameplay just kind of becomes walking through all of these different characters that are ordinarily the strongest enemies you'll face in the entire game. So it gives you this kind of big, tremendous sense of power at the end of the game, where you're going into this place, the Tazzle Terminals, and you're fighting against this race called the Ura, who one of your friends named Zulf betrays you at one point, and there he is, getting beaten up. And so you go into this place to find him and to get that shard I just got. But up until this point, like I said, I still have health, I still have all my powers, all that stuff. Once I come over here, I get an option to move on without Zulf or to take Zulf. If I move on without him, this is what happens. I get to keep the battering ram.
But I don't think he made the same
And
mistake. I wouldn't.
As I walk up here, the game starts to actually pull out a little bit. Give it a second. And you see that you're going to be up against the entire remaining population of Ura. You're going to be fighting through all of that. Ordinarily that'd be daunting, but you've got the battering ram. But even further than that, as you can see, shots now bounce off of me. That wasn't happening a few moments ago. Enemies bounce off of me. The music picks up and is pretty frenetic. Instead of kind of having a somber battle, you have this kind of last-ditch moment where you're blowing through the last of this hostile force, and they are giving it everything they can, but they can't stop you. The music's pretty upbeat, but there is kind of, it's a little bit Shadow of the Colossus-y, where you're dealing with this group that were the strongest enemies in the game. They're reverent warriors, and you're just running through them with no consequence, and they can't stop you. And on the one hand, it's kind of this awesome moment of you kind of finally breaking through and becoming much more powerful than the people who tried to stop you, but also you're dealing with these people who used to be your adversaries, who used to be enemies but respected, and you're just annihilating them. So it's kind of this big pivot of what used to be dangerous isn't anymore. And you're just going to break free. You're going to do what you have to do to fix the Bastion, to set the world right. Now, if you pick up Zulf, you end up with a very different final scene. If you decide to come over here and pick up Zulf, you actually have to abandon the battering ram. And so that entire scene I just showed you can't happen.
I can see it now.
Instead, you're slowed even further by carrying Zulf, and some unique music starts to play. This is the only time this will play in the game.
Don't you worry,
It's called Mother, I'm Coming
Once
Home.
the Bastion's restored,
It's a song about
it'll all be all
Zulf
right.
and his time with his mother. The whole song is sung in his
After
voice.
talking it over like this,
And
guess I'm
as you
beginning
walk
to have
up,
my doubts.
you again start seeing the Ura appear. Here, you don't get that framing shot to see all of the people you're going to fight up against. Instead, they jump down and start attacking you. And you have no means to defend yourself. Unlike before, where shots bounced off of you and enemies bounced off of you, now you're taking shots, but you just keep walking. Your health doesn't decrease. Oh, I guess it does decrease. I never got shot that much. So you have to kind of survive this onslaught, walking through as the Ura unload on you, all to save your friend who betrayed you, while hearing the sad story of him and his mother. There's no means to fight back, and the Ura stop chasing you. They eventually start letting you through. Enemies that used to attack you, you see one of the Ura crushed one of the enemies that was going to attack you. The people who would have been hostile had you left Zulf behind stand, and they actually open up your path. They allow you to walk straight through. And this is what I mean by the subversive pivot. It's taking ordinary combat, taking the enemies that would ordinarily be aggressive, changing their AI patterns so that they don't attack you, taking the damage that you would ordinarily take, turning it off. And by doing that, you get a gameplay moment that is completely unlike anything else in Bastion. I was moved much more by picking up Zulf and seeing how that last moment unfurled than any final boss fight could have moved me. And that, I think, is the strength of one of the strongest moments in Bastion's story, and I think it's a gameplay technique that's really, really useful. To make memorable endings, memorable moments. When you take a gameplay system that you rely upon, like fighting, your health system, enemies behaving a certain way, and turn it on its head, and just completely change the way it behaves. Think like Bioshock, the big moment in Bioshock. If you've played Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII for the PSP, the very end of that game also make great use of this sort of gameplay concept. And so I hope you learned a little bit about this little thing I made up. I mean, twists are nothing new. They're done in... M. Night Shyamalan made an entire career out of twists. But in gameplay, you can do so much more because it's not just mentally digesting the story and setting up your expectations of what's going to happen. There's also kind of a physical sensation of having those mechanics that you've trusted inverted, having your speed slowed down, having to take damage that before you were trying desperately to avoid. That really speaks louder than a simple gameplay twist or a story twist. Like Zulf betraying you, that's a story twist, that's meaningful. But if it ended with a boss fight against Zulf, I don't think it would have been as impactful as having to set your weapons aside and walk through. Or say, I'm setting friendship aside, I'm going to keep my weapons and fight my way through these defenseless people. And so, hope you learned a little bit. Hope this made you think about how gameplay endings and stuff a little bit deeper. Till next time. Peace!